In this video, I'm going to tell you why it's so important to get your finances in order before dating or commencing any relationship with a Filipina. Yes, it's a wise move to do this before starting a relationship with anyone, anywhere in the world. Although many do seem to neglect this particular aspect and don't seem to think it's all that important. When you commence a relationship with a Filipina, you can be very sure that having your finances in very good order will be greatly needed. And in fact, if you don't, it could end up costing you your relationship. So to find out more, be very sure to buckle up and stay with me here. Now I'm going to approach this video with a mix of my own experiences as well as those experiences of many guys that I've been communicating with over the past few years. Before I started dating my Filipina back in 2013, I knew that I didn't want to commence any new relationship whilst I was struggling financially in any way. One must know that the pressure of finances is one of the main reasons that cause issues in relationships and ultimately end relationships. And I certainly didn't want that to be the case when I met a good woman to share my life with. So I made the decision that I had to get rid of my debts prior to committing to any woman, so when the time was right, I'd be able to focus on her and our relationship without the worry of finances. And I knew that if I was to have a relationship with a woman from another country, that I'd need some disposable income to make it work. So I set out on a mission to pay off my debts as quickly as possible. I was able to do this by not having the expense of a car for some time, so that I could pay all the leftover income after expenses off my debts. In my entire adult life up until that time, I'd never been debt-free. And looking back, I'm sure that the pressure of debt on my previous relationships over the years certainly contributed to the failures. Once I was debt-free, it was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I could only then see for the very first time how much debt weighed me and my relationships down. But getting your finances in order before dating a Filipina goes far deeper than that. One must know that when you commence a Foreigner Filipina relationship, you'll have many expenses that will come up. And I'm not talking about the small incidental expenses like passports, vaccinations or travel insurance, but more so in the early stages when you want to be together in person as much as possible. You're going to need to fly to the Philippines, most likely more than once. And very possible up to several times before you guys can be together full time. All this flying back and forth costs money for airfares and accommodation, buying gifts and showing your Filipina a great time. Yes, whilst the Philippines may be inexpensive compared to your country, believe me, when you're there, if you're not careful, you can really burn through that money, and the last thing you want to be worried about when in the Philippines is your finances. But you can be very sure this is only the very start of the expenses. As the relationship progresses, many foreign guys like to help their Filipina, who they may still be dating or engaged and possibly even married to, with some financial assistance via a monthly allowance. I know some guys say don't send her anything, but if you get to that stage of the relationship where you truly do love and care for her, then you'll want to make sure that she's well looked after whilst you're waiting to be together. Now, what amount you send her each month will depend on your and her circumstances. But either way, it's still going to be an ongoing expense that many never factor into when in a relationship with a Filipina. When we look at dating a woman from our own country, Very few of us would be giving her a monthly allowance. So being in a relationship with a Filipina is vastly different in this area, and one must be fully prepared. And the time may come where you want her to come to your country, whether it be for a vacation or to live with you permanently. The cost for a visa to visit you may be rather inexpensive, but as you'll need to fully support her during that stay, you need to prove to the government that your finances are in good order and you can easily care for her in every way. Now, of course, this includes everything from her food through to her clothes that she'll need, the extra feminine products that many guys never think about, and so on. Make no mistake, you will be fully financially responsible for her. And you can take this up an extra notch when you apply for her to come and live full-time with you in your country. The cost of this visa alone in Australia is astronomical and currently is approaching $9,000, and that's without an agent filing your paperwork. I do know that in the US it's much cheaper, but still, you need to show that you have good finances that will be able to look after her for the long term. Now, I know of many guys I've chatted to over the years who love the idea of finding a Filipina, and they have a dream of marrying her and living a great life together. But sadly, they may fail to ever see the reality of their situation, where they're heavily in debt and have minimal, if any, disposable income left over each month. They may have child support or alimony to pay, as well as many debts that may have carried over from a previous relationship. But whatever the reason, the reality is that they're not in any position to start a relationship with a Filipina and falsely raise her hopes that they'll be together someday, especially if the guy doesn't have a job or the funds to even get over to the Philippines once. And yes, I've spoken to guys who were exactly as I describe here, and they seem to think that magically they'd get a job and money and everything would be somehow peachy, only still to be waiting to go and be with his Filipina 5 years down the track. For those of you that are serious about finding a good Filipina, then be sure to have your finances in order first is my best advice. At least to the point where you know whatever costs come your way as a result of the relationship, you'll have no problems paying for it. And that includes, as time goes by, some guys like to buy land and put a house on it in the Philippines, or buy a condo there in one of the cities, help set up a business for their Filipina and her family, or just to send some general monetary support to her parents on a monthly basis. These are all common things that some foreign guys neglect to factor in when they decide to start a relationship with a Filipina. And some may come to resent this fact at some point in the future. So be sure to have a good understanding of what's involved, especially around money, so you can be fully focused on your Filipina and the relationship to give it a much higher chance of success long term. If you're looking for more valuable free information and tips around dating a Filipina, then be sure to check out my comprehensive playlist on screen now. And be very sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.